What's going on, NFL fans? It's the NFL Exporter live on the Derek Shapiro Show, and it's time for another edition of The Final Wrap, your official NFL sports talk show right here on the Derek Shapiro Show each and every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, I've got a great show lined up for you today as we recap all of our action from around the NFL each week. Before we get into our first segment, let's make sure you know how to connect with us on our social networks. You can follow me on Twitter at NFLExporter. You can also send me a friend request over on Facebook.com/NFL-Exporter. And for behind the scenes footage and exclusive interviews, you want to subscribe to my channel, just go to YouTube.com, click on channels, and in the search engine put NFL Exporter. For all the above, my name is spelled NFLExporter. You also want to make sure to follow Derek Shapiro on Twitter at Derek Shapiro Show, and the word show is spelled S-H-O. There is no W on the end. Or you can send Derek a friend request over on Facebook.com/Derek Shapiro Show. There you will see Derek in the picture with the classic former Fuji members Wyclef Jean. The call-in number to the show is 716-249-0552, or if you prefer to hit us up using email, that email address is nflexporter@yahoo.com. Just leave your name, your city and state, your favorite football team, and whatever it is you'd like to for me to talk about, just leave it in the email and I'll make sure to include it in one of our weekly segments. To get the ball rolling this week, we had 3 games on Thanksgiving Day. You know that usually there's a game every Thursday, but because of the holiday, we had 3 outstanding games on our hands. Things got started out in Detroit, where it was the Detroit Lions beating the Chicago Bears 34-17. That win improved Detroit to 8-4 on the year, while the Bears are now 5-7 and pretty much out of playoff contention. In this game, it was all about Detroit rebounding after a tough 2-game road trip in which they played the Arizona Cardinals as well as the New England Patriots. But you knew this was a game that Detroit was going to get back on track. You had Matthew Stafford passing for 390 yards. 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Drake Bell handled things on the ground. He had 23 carries for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Calvin Johnson is back fully healthy. Certainly looked the part this past Thursday. He caught 11 passes for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. The biggest thing that stood out into this game was the Bears' inability to run the football, and I should say maybe lack thereof of even putting out an effort. The Bears ran the football just 8 times during this football game for only 13 yards. The Bears defense also continues to struggle. This has been one of the worst units in the NFL. They played this game without rookie defensive back Corey Fuller, as well as outside linebacker Lance Briggs. And, Chicago is a team offensively that has a lot of talent on paper. Alshon Jeffries had a good game with 70 yards and 2 TDs, but Chicago just never able to really establish anything on the ground. And again, I don't know how much effort we can say that they gave, considering they ran the football only 8 times. When you have a premier running back like Matt Forte, certainly makes you scratch your head. I certainly understand that Detroit has one of the best run defenses in the NFL, so it's very difficult to try to pick up any yardage against them, but you still have to make some type of effort to keep the defense honest. And, for Chicago, it just has not worked out this year. Meanwhile, for Detroit, when you're looking at the teams they have remaining on their schedule, you certainly think this is a team that can make the wild card, if not win their division. In Week 14, they have Tampa Bay at home. Week 15, Minnesota at home. Week 16, they travel out to Chicago. If they can win those 3 games, or perhaps Green Bay loses a game, that final game of the NFL season, Detroit is going to be playing at Green Bay. Detroit has already beat Green Bay once this year, so if those teams have the same record, or Detroit is just 1 game off, if Detroit wins that game, then they'll end up winning the division because they'll hold the tiebreaker, actually sweeping Green Bay this year. Moving on to our next game, it was Philadelphia putting a smackdown on the Dallas Cowboys 33-10. That win improved Philadelphia to 9-3 and gave them sole possession of the NFC East lead. This game dropped Dallas to 8-4, and I tell you, this was certainly two different teams playing. For Philadelphia, just controlled things on the ground, had 45 rushes for 256 yards. Shady McCoy paced him with 159 of those and a touchdown. Mark Sanchez, very efficient with the football, 217 passing yards. Threw for a touchdown, ran for another, did not turn the football over. Meanwhile, for Dallas, Tony Romo probably played his worst game of the season. The Cowboys as a whole, this is probably the worst game that they played all year. They had 3 turnovers. You know, that's never a recipe for success. Tony Romo had 2 of those interceptions. Dez Bryant held to 73 yards. DeMarco Murray did score a touchdown, but only had 73 yards on 20 carries. And this is a game that Dallas's defense was really exposed. If you recall, coming into this season, we all knew that the Dallas Cowboys could put up points when you have Tony Romo, DeMarco Murray, Dez Bryant, Jason Witten, even a complimentary second receiver in Terrence Williams. But that defense came in on paper looking like one of the worst in the NFL. I would say it's a unit that overachieved, but at the same time, I think Dallas's overall winning kind of let their defense get lost in the shuffle in the bigger scheme of things. And this was a game where their offense really couldn't get a lot going, and their defense just couldn't get any stops flat out. And so for Philadelphia, certainly a game that they needed, considering that these two teams are going to play again in a couple weeks. But Philadelphia just looked good, all aspects of the game, all sides of the ball. This is a team the last couple of the year that really just seems to have the Cowboys number. But again, Dallas will have an opportunity to avenge this loss in a couple weeks when they play again in Philadelphia. That game could ultimately decide who wins the NFC East title. And then to wrap things up on Thursday, it was the Seattle Seahawks pretty much manhandling the San Francisco 49ers 19-3. That win now has Seattle at 8-4, while the 49ers dropped to 7-5. And when you look at this ball game, this was certainly two teams going in opposite directions. You have quarterback Russell Wilson, a very confident player right now, very good decision maker, knows where he wants to go with the football. When he drops back to pass, knows how to buy time. And again, it's just not doing anything to hurt this team as far as making silly mistakes or turnovers. Wilson was 15 out of 22, 236 yards, threw a touchdown pass, also ran for another 35 yards. Colin Kaepernick struggled mightily, only could muster up 121 pass yards and threw 2 interceptions. When you look at what happened on the ground, Seattle was able to run the football 34 times for 157 yards, paced by Marshawn Lynch's 103 yards. For San Francisco, only 18 carries for 64 yards. And what you're seeing right now is Seattle's championship pedigree starting to resurface. This defense has become dominant, only giving up 6 points the last 2 weeks, beating division foes Arizona and San Francisco. And I think you're looking at Seattle right now kind of aligning themselves to make yet another playoff run. When I'm looking at the landscape of the NFC right now, I would certainly rank Green Bay and Seattle right at the top of the class. And then it kind of shakes down to some teams like Philadelphia, Detroit, Dallas, Arizona, things like that. But this fierce rivalry is certainly one-sided this year. If you factor in for San Francisco, they played this game without Navarro Bowman. They played this game without Patrick Willis, 2 Pro Bowl, all-pro caliber type players at inside linebacker. And, San Francisco's defense has not been the problem all year. It's the offense that cannot manufacture points and has really struggled. And so, I'm looking at San Francisco, and I certainly expect the team to play with a lot more pride. But just right now, if you look at Seattle and you look at San Francisco, they just don't match up. I should say Seattle matches up so much better. Again, their defense just dominating, completely eliminating the outside weapons for Seattle. But again, unable to run the football. That's the key. Russell Wilson, it's not like he has a plethora of weapons at the receiver position at his disposal. But again, he knows where he wants to go with the football. Very decisive, making quick decisions, buying time with his feet, and just being accurate with the football. For Colin Kaepernick, it's the exact opposite. He's back there running for his life when he drops back to pass. Very uncertain where he wants to go with the football and not throwing the football accurately. And so, these teams will meet again. It's going to be up in Seattle, but I think right now Seattle just has this team's number this year. They certainly exuded some of their dominance, and going out to play Seattle up in that 12th man is just not a place that you want to play in. So Seattle certainly looking in good position to make a playoff run if they can stay healthy. We're going to run to our first break. It's the NFL Exporter. You are listening to the final wrap on the Derek Shapiro Show. We'll be right back after this quick break. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the final wrap with your host, the NFL Exporter, live on the Derek Shapiro Show. Don't forget to join me each and every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we recap all of our action from around the NFL each week. Now let's go ahead and start taking a look at what happened on Sunday. Things got started with the Indianapolis Colts knocking off the Washington Redskins 49-27. That win for Indianapolis improved them to 8-4. They're a couple games away from clinching that AFC South division yet again. For the Washington Redskins, the loss now drops them to 3-9. Obviously, they have no shot at making the playoffs. When you take a look at what happened in this game, pretty plain and simple, Indianapolis is just a superior team. You had Andrew Luck, who was just having an MVP caliber type season. 370 yards, 5 touchdown passes, only 1 interception. He had distribution to the likes of rookie Dante Moncrief, who had 134 yards and 2 TDs. Kobe Fleener is tight end, 127 yards, 2 TDs. T.Y. Hilton got in on the action with 62 yards and a touchdown. You also like the addition of Boom Herron. Now, when the season started, Trent Richardson was your starter. Ahmad Bradshaw was getting pretty much the same amount of playing time. Unfortunately, Bradshaw suffered an ankle injury that cut his season short, and in comes Boom Herron, the third year back from Ohio State, had 96 total yards in his first game. This was the second game, had 88 yards on just 8 carries, scored a touchdown. I certainly see him as being the guy who's going to be taking more of a leading role moving forward as Trent Richardson continues to struggle to get anything going on the ground. When you look at also Indianapolis, you're kind of wondering, where's Hakeem Nicks? You know that T.Y. Hilton and Reggie Wayne are the starters, but Nicks is a guy they brought over in the offseason who I thought would be paying big dividends. But it's been rookie receiver Dante Moncrief who's really stepped his game up in the games that T.Y. Hilton has been blanketed, or maybe Reggie Wayne wasn't available. So kind of shocking there that Hakeem Nicks is not a part of the mix in the offense a little bit more. When you look over at Washington, this is a team right now that's pretty much, I don't really know what they're playing for. I guess pride, if nothing else. Colt McCoy started for Robert Griffith III. We all know that he struggled mightily this year. Finally got benched. And after seeing McCoy go out and throw for 392 yards and 3 touchdowns, you have to say it was the right decision. I mean, RG3 just has not looked good at all this season. Doesn't have a win under his belt. And when you see a third string quarterback like Colt McCoy come in and practically throw for 400 yards and 3 TDs, just makes you wonder what exactly are the issues that Griffin III is going through. Whatever it is, he's going to have to get it together fast, or he's going to find himself on another team team or in a backup role rather quickly. Jordan Reed, the tight end for Washington, 9 catches, 123 yards. Deshaun Jackson had 84 yards and a touchdown, but it proved to be meaningless as at the end of the day, Indianapolis was able to win this game by 22 points. Ultimately, this Redskins defense, and particularly that secondary, just not built to last. That's certainly an area that franchise is going to have to focus on in the offseason. Moving on to our next game, it was Houston beating Tennessee 45-24. The Texans trying to hold steady. They're 6-6. They are on the outside looking in of the playoff picture right now, but we've seen stranger things happening with 4 games left to go. If they can put together a 4-game winning streak, including knocking off Indianapolis, who's a couple games ahead of them at the top of that division, there's a good chance that they could make the playoffs in a wild card position. Meanwhile, for Tennessee, this loss dropped them to 2-10. I think we all know that's a record that's not going to qualify for the playoffs. In this game, we've seen Texans quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick have a career day, throwing for 358 yards, 6 touchdowns. Have no idea where that came from. He actually had gotten benched due to average play. Did not play the last 2 games, but when his replacement Ryan Mallett went down with the season-ending injury last week, Fitzpatrick was able to get back in the lineup and take full advantage of it. You've seen second-year player DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver absolutely explode for 9 catches, 238 yards, 2 TDs. This guy is really making progress in his second year. You know that Andre Johnson, who's been their franchise wide receiver for so long, starting to get up in age a little. So I think we're starting to see a little bit of a passing of the torches. Hopkins is now over 1,000 yards for the season, and obviously the #1 target for Ryan Fitzpatrick in that passing game. I think the most encouraging news that you've seen for Houston is that star running back Arian Foster was able to come back into the lineup after missing a couple games with a groin injury. Came back with a nice performance, 105 all-purpose yards, including a touchdown reception. Andre Johnson did have a TD as well. And how about J.J. Watt, the all-pro defensive tackle, not only wreaking havoc on offenses every week, he caught his 3rd touchdown reception of the year. Very impressive for a guy who can do it on both sides of the football. When you look at Tennessee, really not a lot to rave about. Still continuing to struggle to run the football. The injuries are starting to mount now. Starting quarterback Zach Mettenberg went down with an injury. We're not quite sure how serious it is, so we'll have to keep tabs on that and monitor his status. Also, wide receiver Justin Hunter, our hearts and prayers go out to him. Suffered a lacerated spleen. I heard there was a little bleeding involved, so not sure how long he's going to be out. But this Tennessee Titans team, certainly young and rebuilding, got a lot of work to do in the offseason to try to get better. In one of our bigger games of the day, it was the Buffalo Bills knocking off the Cleveland Browns. Both of those teams now 7-5, and that was a key victory for Buffalo because if it comes down to a tiebreaker with them and Cleveland having the same record, they'll be a step ahead, owning the tiebreaker there. This was a defensive battle, and this is certainly what we thought we would see. This game was 3-0 in favor of Cleveland at halftime, but the Bills came out fast, coming out of the locker room and never looked back. They scored a touchdown. Kyle Orton to his slot receiver Hogan for 3 yards to put Buffalo up 7-3. On the ensuing possession, Bills defensive end Jerry Hughes stripped running back Terrence West of the football, picked it up, ran it in for a touchdown to give the Bills a 14-3 lead. And at that point, with how well this Bills defense is playing and the home crowd behind them, the Bills never looked back. This Bills defense is absolutely playing lights out this year, being ranked inside of the top 5. Very difficult to run on this team. They came in to week 13 leading the NFL in sacks with 46. And man, I tell you, they can just apply pressure. They lock you down running, really make teams one-dimensional. And playing up in Buffalo is just not a strong look right now. The Bills' offense, though, is going to have to find a way to get it together. Kyle Orton, not impressive at all. 190 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. But again, it was the Bills' defense really putting the clamps on here. Brian Hoyer struggled. He had 192 yards, 2 interceptions. Isaiah Crowell and Terrence West just couldn't get anything going on the ground. And, like I said, for Buffalo, this defense, once it gets ahead, really sinks its teeth in. And so very impressive victory for Buffalo at home. This is a team without question. If they had a better offense and more firepower, you'd be looking at them as a legitimate Super Bowl contender. That is how well their defense is playing right now. Moving on to our next game, this was a big AFC battle as well. You had the San Diego Chargers coming out, playing the Baltimore Ravens and picking up a huge win on the road. I think this was a game that most people seen. Baltimore winning at home after an impressive victory last week in New Orleans. But this was Phillip Rivers and company coming out, and like they did late last year, really putting an excellent game together that should boost their confidence coming down the stretch run, because they have an extremely brutal schedule, playing the likes of New England and Denver again, as well as San Francisco and Kansas City. So very tough schedule ahead of themselves. This was a game that they desperately needed. San Diego now improves to 8-4, Baltimore 7-5. And when you took a look at this game, you hear me talk about third down conversions a lot. Third down conversions are so essential to a team winning ball games because of, number one, it means that you move the chains. And if you're moving the chains, you're getting the defense tired and you're sustaining your drives and you're chewing up clock. And that's exactly what you want to do in the NFL. How about San Diego converting 9 out of 11 third down conversions? That is remarkable, and that is how you get the job done. That ultimately allows San Diego to get past 2 costly turnovers, usually in the game so tight on the road. Those 2 turnovers will come back to haunt you. But it was Phillip Rivers leading the charge and leading San Diego to 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. San Diego put up 21 points on the road in the fourth quarter, and they had it all working. You're looking at Keenan Allen, the second-year wide receiver, finally starting to hit his stride now. 11 catches, 121 yards, 2 TDs. Phillip Rivers really took advantage of a poor Baltimore secondary that I even failed to realize is ranked 31st in the NFL, which is next to dead last. Rivers had 383 yards, 3 TD passes, very efficient in the work that he did. And ultimately, this game came down to one team, San Diego, capitalizing on opportunities in the red zone, and another team not doing so. This was a game that Baltimore was ahead by 3 points with about 2 minutes left, got inside the red zone, and instead of being able to convert a touchdown, had to settle for a field goal, which ultimately put them up 6 points. On the ensuing drive, Phillip Rivers led San Diego down the football field, picked up a key pass interference call on one of the Ravens defenders in the end zone, which moved San Diego down to the 1-yard line. From there, Rivers found Eddie Royal on a wide receiver screen, and it was all she wrote. Now, Baltimore did have an opportunity to try to kick a field goal at the end of this game, but when the receiver caught the football at about the 40-yard line, which would have gave the Ravens kicker Justin Tucker an attempt at a 57-yarders, the San Diego defender was able to tackle him in bounds. Baltimore was out of timeout, so the clock expired and Baltimore just couldn't get that attempt up. It was a game where Joe Flacco did pretty well. 225 yards, 2 TDs, 0 interceptions. Justin Forsett paced him on the ground, 26 carries, 104 yards. You had Torrey Smith with 65 yards and 2 TDs, but I think we all wondered what happened to Steve Smith Sr. This past week. Only 1 catch for 2 yards. Pedestrian performance like that, absolutely unacceptable for a guy who's been a very productive player in the NFL so long. I'm also just shocked to see that Ravens defense give up 21 points in the fourth quarter on their home field. Just something not accustomed to seeing. But ultimately, the Chargers got the win they needed. Again, a very tough road ahead for them. Our next game, seeing the New York Football Giants blow yet another football game, this time letting it slip away to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if your ear was not to the street, this was the upset special of the week. If you look at how well the Jacksonville Jaguars defense has played the last month or so, and if you look at what Jacksonville has done to teams who've came down to Jacksonville, with the exception of the Indianapolis Colts earlier in the year, look, they held the Pittsburgh Steelers offense to 10 points. The Miami Dolphins offense held them to 10 points. They also knocked off the Cleveland Browns and held them to 6 points when they came out to Jacksonville. So this was a game where there was some writing on the wall. Now, things did not start out according to plan. The Giants jumped out to a 21-3 lead in this ball game at halftime, paced by running back Rashard Jennings, who returned to the team that drafted him a couple years ago, Jacksonville. Jennings had 91 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Eli Manning had 247 yards and a touchdown. Odell Beckham had 7 catches for 90 yards. And usually that type of balance is enough to win the ball game. But this one was all about the Jaguars defense. Turned it up in the second half. Jacksonville used a 22-3 run in the second half to win this game on the last second field goal by kicker Josh Scobie. And it was the Jaguars defense that got it done, forcing 2 turnovers that they converted into touchdowns. Really took the pressure off quarterback Blake Bortles, who's really continuing to struggle as he learning the ropes in the NFL. But the thing that he did well this week was not turn the football over. Had 194 yards, a touchdown, 0 interceptions. And again, in the game that you have that close, that 1 interception ultimately could have made the difference. That win for New York has them now at 3-9. The Jaguars, happy to get any wins they can, are now 2-10. We're going to run to another quick break. Don't touch that dial. It's the NFL Exporter live on DerekShapiroShow.com. You are listening to the final wrap. When we return, we'll hop back into more of our Week 13 action from around the NFL. All right, everyone. Thank you for returning to the final wrap on the Derek Shapiro Show. As always, I'm your host, the NFL Exporter. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at NFL Exporter, or send me a friend request over on Facebook.com/NFL Exporter. That is the easiest and most convenient way to keep up on the latest news and updates that I have going on weekly. Now let's go ahead and jump back into our Week 13 games. And we're going to start as the Cincinnati Bengals barely slipped by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 14-13. This was a trap game, and Cincinnati almost fell into it. The biggest thing that happened in this one is at the end of the game, as the clock was almost ran out, Tampa Bay completed a pass to get them down to about Cincinnati's 20-yard line. And right before they could run their next play, head coach of the Bengals, Marvin Lewis, ran out on the football field, threw his challenge flag, and when they looked at the play, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had 12 men on the football field, which is a 15-yard penalty. That penalty ultimately held Tampa Bay out of field goal position. They could not get down close enough to get an attempt off. And that crucial play, great play there by head coach Marvin Lewis, just really aware and had his head screwed on tightly. That's one that the officials missed. And if he didn't throw that flag out and challenge that play, Tampa Bay would have had an easy about 35-yard attempt. We never know if it would have went through, but you certainly think from that range. Most kickers are very accurate from that distance. In this game, certainly wasn't a whole lot to talk about. Talk about third down conversions. I told you how San Diego was efficient, converting 9 out of 11. It was the exact opposite for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were only able to convert 2 out of 11 third downs. That is not going to get the job done. Too many drive killers. If you're not converting third downs, you know what? Your offense is not on the football field, yet your defense is, and the balance just isn't there. This was a very ugly and sloppy struggle. I will say that Tampa Bay's defense has played much better as of late. But again, the reason Cincinnati struggled this week falls on the shoulders of Mr. Andy Dalton, Mr. Jekyll and Hyde himself. Just don't know what player that you are going to see out on that football field week in and week out. And here he was throwing 3 interceptions, really allowing Tampa Bay an opportunity to stay in the ball game, in which Cincinnati's defense really dominated. Again, from a stat standpoint, just really wasn't a lot to talk about. You're talking about Tampa Bay did a great job holding Giovanni Bernard and Jeremy Hill to just 89 yards on 23 carries. Josh McCown didn't help Tampa Bay's cause any, 190 yards and an interception. Continues to struggle with playing clean football. And for Tampa Bay, a team that just flat out can't run the football. We also seen one of the top wide receivers and rookies in the NFL, Mike Evans, get his string of 4 straight games with a TD snap. But again, ultimately, this is a game that Tampa Bay could have won. You know what the old saying is, bad teams find ways to lose, and I think there's a reason that Tampa Bay is 2-10 this year. That was a huge win for Cincinnati, who is now 8-3-1 and has just a little bit of breathing room as the Steelers, the Browns, and the Ravens, the 3 other teams who are a game and a half behind them in their division, now have suffered a loss this week and are all 7-5. Next, we've seen the St. Louis Rams put a college football spanking on the Oakland Raiders, 52-0, and the Raiders just never had a chance in this one. This is a game that the Rams jumped on them early, and they never, ever looked back. Sean Hill, the quarterback for St. Louis, 183 yards, 2 touchdowns passing, 1 running. We've seen another great rookie, Trey Mason of the Rams, have 117 yards on the ground. 89 came on 1 play, as he had an 89-yard TD. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, also scored a touchdown through the air, which was good. For 164 all-purpose yards in 3 touchdowns. And, the defense for the Rams, they just put the clamps on rookie Derek Carr. I tell you, the happiness was short-lived in Oakland. The Raiders just got their first win of the season last Thursday, and to come out and get stomped in Arizona like this certainly had to do wonders for these guys. I mean, these are grown men, for crying out loud, getting torched like this, 52-0. The Rams defense absolutely lights out. 6 sacks, 3 interceptions, 4 fumble recoveries, a touchdown, just loaded up the stat sheet. And again, like the Bills, this is a championship caliber defense out here in St. Louis. This is the same Rams defense that held Peyton Manning and company to just 7 points a couple weeks ago. And so, if you have to take a trip out and play in the Edward Jones Dome out there in St. Louis, make sure that you have your chin strap on tight, because these cats are straight out laying guys down. That loss dropped the Raiders to 1-11. St. Louis trying to get to 500. They're now 5-7. Again, don't have a chance at the playoffs, but this is certainly a young, talented team. I'll give head coach Jeff Fisher a lot of credit for keeping his guys motivated, playing on a week in and week out basis. You want to talk about another team that's playing some great defense right now? Let's take it out to Minnesota and head coach Mike Zimmer. What a job he's doing in his first year. Was a defensive coordinator last year for the Cincinnati Bengals. Minnesota put a spanking on the Carolina Panthers, who are struggling so bad right now. It's really pathetic what's going on out there. Just sickening watching that team, quote unquote, play football this year. Minnesota 31, Carolina 13. Teddy Bridgewater, rookie quarterback for Minnesota, certainly a boost to his confidence coming out. Didn't throw for a ton of yards, but anytime your team can win in a blowout in front of the home fans, and Bridgewater did have 2 TD passes. The key, no interceptions. And then for a rookie quarterback, that's certainly something to build on when you can come out and play clean football. You're also looking at the Vikings defense dominating with 4 sacks and interceptions. Their special teams got the game ball, though, coming out blocking 2 punts and returning both of those for touchdowns. There's your plus 14 in this ball game. You take those 2 TDs off the board. This is a 17-13 win for Carolina. And so, special teams errors, I don't know what else can go wrong for head coach Ron Rivera in this Panthers team. Cam Newton continues to struggle, only 191 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But, that pathetic offensive line, they don't give them a chance. And, you hear me repeatedly say week in and week out, this Carolina Panthers team, they can't run, only a couple weapons in the passing game. This is one of the easiest easiest teams to scheme for right now when it comes to putting a defensive game plan together to stop the very little talent that they have to offer. That win for Minnesota now has them at 5-7. Carolina is done 3-8-1. Absolutely pathetic. Moving on, we've seen the Atlanta Falcons get a much-needed victory, 29-18. That win is over the Arizona Cardinals. Atlanta now 5-7. Arizona now 9-3. And in this game, you've seen Matt Ryan and company get back on track. Offense really has been struggling all year, but finally got some balance. Quarterback Matt Ryan, 361 yards, 2 TDs, and interception. Steven Jackson, ever since they've been giving him the full workload, he's becoming more of a viable asset. Had 101 yards on the ground. And how about Julio Jones stepping up? Roddy White, the other starting receiver for Atlanta, did not play in this game due to an injury. And Arizona came into this game very confident, especially their defense, which had really been holding teams in check. You had a big-time showdown. Patrick Peterson versus Julio Jones. Both these guys used to play out in the SEC conference. And, throughout the course of the week, Patrick Peterson was talking a lot of trash about how he was going to lock Julio Jones down and he was going to be on him one-on-one all day. And, how when he was at LSU and Julio Jones was at Alabama, how he used to lock Julio Jones down. Julio Jones did the talking with his play on the football field, going off for 10 catches, 189 yards, a touchdown. Absolutely just put it on Patrick Peterson from the opening whistle. And so a very impressive victory for Atlanta. When we're looking at this Arizona Cardinals team, and now we're starting to turn the other cheek, because this was a team a couple weeks ago that was 9-1, flying high in that NFC West division. But ever since they lost their quarterback, Carson Palmer, it's been nothing but trouble. Yes, they were able to get one win at home over Detroit, and they barely did that, 14-6. But quarterback Drew Stanton, who's replacing Carson Palmer, just not getting the job done. 5 turnovers in his first 3 starts since Palmer has been out the lineup. Arizona unable to run the football, and Drew Stanton not a very confident quarterback when he's dropping back the pass. And so this was a team, again, was 9-1. After 2 straight losses, they're now 9-3, and I'm not sure that they're going to make the playoffs. This NFC conference is loaded. I'm thinking Arizona has done enough to get in, but when you look at their upcoming schedule, they've got Kansas City, San Francisco, St. Louis, and Seattle again. And so there is not a guarantee that this team is going to win another game this season. And if they do, it's hard to imagine that maybe it's more than one. If quarterback Drew Stanton can't cut down on the turnovers, if they can't run the football, this is a game where we've seen Andre Ellington only have 5 carries for 13 yards. Arizona ran the ball 11 times for 35 yards. Stanton, 2 interceptions. That is not going to get the job done. And right now, Seattle is breathing down their neck. I know they can feel it. The defending champs are 8-4. And again, they're going to play Arizona again. The way I see this division shaking out, I think inevitably Seattle's going to knock them off again and end up winning that division crown. And we don't know what Arizona's record is going to be. And so this is a team right now that, again, was one of the favorites in the NFL to make a serious push in the playoffs. But it's all heading south now. Tough schedule ahead. Some injuries starting to factor in. Larry Fitzgerald did not play in this game. Ellington left with a hip pointer, although it's not supposed to be that serious. But I know this is a team right now in that locker room, and in particularly in these guys' minds, and it's starting to become a mental thing, because they're saying, man, with this Drew Stanton at quarterback, man, I don't know if we can get the job done. And so Arizona's now 9-3. Atlanta still holding steady, even though they're 5-7. They're in first place in the NFC South Division. Next, it was the Pittsburgh Steelers playing the New Orleans Saints, and this one was all about the Saints. Big time victory from Drew Brees and company on the road. In this one, Drew Brees finally had that game that we had come accustomed to seeing him play for so many years in the NFL. 257 yards, 5 TD passes, 0 interceptions, spread the wealth around like he does always, threw the football to 9 different receivers, and they got the balance. Not only did Breeze hurt you in the air with the 5 TD passes, Mark Ingram paced him on the ground. with 122 yards. And then Marcus Colston, Nick Toon, Ben Watson, Kenny Stills, and Evan Lorick all caught touchdown passes, but it was Kenny Stills who really did a lot of the damage. 162 yards on 5 catches, a 69-yard touchdown to really bust this game wide open. For Pittsburgh, this has been a team that's been up and down all year, and particularly on the defensive side of the football. Ben Roethlisberger did pass for 435 yards, but just was inefficient throughout the course of the football game. Had 2 interceptions. Those came at the wrong times in that football game. And I think this is a game without question that we all came in really looking at how bad the Saints defense was and is. But I think that kind of had us kind of turn our attention away from how pathetic the Steelers defense has played in large stretches this year. Pittsburgh, again, from a stat standpoint, you love it. Antonio Brown, 97 yards, 2 TDs. As I mentioned, Rossberger, 435 yards. Le'Veon Bell continues to be one of the best running backs in the NFL. Got you 95 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Caught 8 passes for 159 yards. This guy put up 254 all-purpose yards. Has just been a stellar performer all year, but ultimately that Steelers defense couldn't hold up. Pittsburgh could not make the plays when necessary, so do not let the score fool you. This was a 35-16 game. Pittsburgh tacked on a couple late touchdowns, but ultimately this was a game that New Orleans won in convincing fashion. The Steelers now 7-5, stuck in that wild card race in the AFC, while the New Orleans Saints kept pace with Atlanta. They're tied for first place record-wise at 5-7, but right now Atlanta holds the tiebreaker. These two teams will see each other in Week 16, and I'm quite sure that matchup is probably whoever wins that game is going to inevitably bring home the NFC South title. We're going to take one more break. When we come back, we'll finish wrapping up our Week 13 games from around the NFL, so don't touch that dial. It's the NFL Exporter live on the Derek Shapiro Show. You are listening to The Final Wrap. Welcome back to The Final Wrap with your host, the NFL Exporter, here on the Derek Shapiro Show. Don't forget, if you happen to catch this live broadcast on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, this show re-airs every single Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at NFLExporter. Also, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's over on YouTube.com. Just click on channels in the search engine, put NFL Exporter for a lot of exclusive interviews and behind the scenes footage for both of those. That spelling is NFLExporter. Let's go ahead and finish wrapping up our Week 13 games from around the NFL. And the biggest game, without question, they got played this past Sunday, seeing the New England Patriots go out and play the Green Bay Packers. Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, first time that these guys have met in their careers, which is a surprise considering how long Tom Brady as well as Aaron Rodgers have been starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And I tell you, these guys certainly did not let us down. Great game in which the Green Bay Packers were able to edge out the New England Patriots 26-21. In this game, we've seen Aaron Rodgers continue to be on fire, hitting the Patriots secondary up for 368 yards, 2 touchdown passes. It really should have been 3, as rookie Devonta Adams dropped a touchdown. He was wide open and just took his eyes off the football, and the ball ended up going through his hands around the 2-yard line. He would have walked in easily. Nonetheless, Rodgers, very impressive, just so accurate with the football. This guy is in a zone right now. If you're looking at what he's done lately, how about 20 touchdowns and no interceptions for the year? Aaron Rodgers has 32 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, definitely playing at an MVP level. And the Packers got the perfect balance that they needed. When this season started, I really liked New England's defense on paper, but as the first couple games started to happen, wasn't really impressed. But this is a unit that has came around. Certainly they have had to make amends for the loss of Jared Mayo. They went out and got Akeem Ayers from Tennessee. He's came in and done an excellent job. They also played this game without defensive end Chandler Jones, who's been out of New England's lineup for about a month or so now. I know he's going to be returning to action soon as he practiced this week. But when you look at what New England has done, their secondary, which is ranked first in the NFL, when they brought in free agents Brandon Browner, who was a part of that vaunted Legion of Boom secondary over in Seattle, they brought over Darrelle Revis, who we all know was the best defensive back in the NFL about 3 or 4 years ago when he was playing with the New York Jets. Those two guys are really making it happen in the secondary, playing very tight coverage, allowing for Bill Belichick to be flexible, mixing up his blitzes and coverages. But that is the one area that I've seen New England have some flaws and chinks in their armors at various times this year. And that's not being able to get a pass rush. Now, obviously, you're not going to play a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, who has the offensive skill players around him, like a Jordy Nelson, a Randall Cobb, and Eddie Lacy. But New England's got to do a better job at getting pressure on quarterbacks. I understand that they like to drop a lot of men into coverage. And again, for an average quarterback with some with one good weapon in the passing game or an average receiving core, it's not going to happen. New England too disciplined. Playing too well on defense, but this offense that Green Bay brought to the table too much. I would say that New England did a great job limiting Jordy Nelson. Only had 53 yards, but had a big 35-yard touchdown pass right before halftime that really gave Green Bay enough of a lead to hang on for this game. Randall Cobb was efficient as well, had 7 catches for 85 yards. But we talk about the multitude of weapons, and when you have a precision passer like Aaron Rodgers who can put the ball on the money no matter who it is, and that's exactly what we've seen happen. His touchdown passes, again, came one to Jordy Nelson. The other one, just a beautiful pass to rookie tight end. You have to excuse me, I forget his first name, but his last name is Rodgers as well. Second straight week that he's catching a touchdown pass from Aaron Rodgers. They're starting to call it the Rodgers to Rodgers connection. But Devonta Adams, 6 catches, 121 yards. So you can see that Aaron Rodgers spreads the football around, and you're certainly seeing those other guys step up in the game where New England certainly has the capabilities of taking Green Bay's top 2 passing out options out of the game in Cobb and Nelson, who still, both those guys still had a very solid game. And then you look at running back Eddie Lacy, huge difference maker here, was able to carry the football 21 times for 98 yards to really give Green Bay the balance that they needed on offense. So very impressive for what Green Bay did on offense, but I think it was their defense that finally stepped up, and that's kind of what the jury is out on Green Bay. We know what Aaron Rodgers and those guys bring to the table, but can their defense step up? And they certainly did that. Clay Matthews had some plays where he disrupted Tom Brady. Julius Peppers had some deflections. The Green Bay Packers secondary played very tight coverage outside of a couple mistakes, and you expect that when you're playing against a tough team like Tom Brady and company. But very nice victory for Green Bay at home. They now improved to 9-3, and I think they are the top team in the NFC right now record-wise, although I'm not sure if they had to play the Seattle Seahawks if they could be able to win that game. Very physical team there. When you look at New England, absolutely nothing to be ashamed about. As a matter of fact, Green Bay only converted 1 out of their 4 trips in the red zone in the touchdowns. Had to settle for a lot of field goals, and a lot of that was due in part to the tight coverage. I mean, if you looked at the instant replay on some of those plays, on one play, Aaron Rodgers actually had 12 seconds to throw the football. If you know anything about football, 3 seconds, 3.5 seconds is about the time in practice and overall you have in your head to get the football out. Aaron Rodgers had 12 seconds and he could not find a wide receiver open. That is how well New England was playing a defense in the secondary. So certainly, like I said, New England shouldn't come out of here hanging their head. Very tough loss in this one. You seen Tom Brady throw for 245 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Brandon LaFell was the recipient of those 2 touchdowns. LeGarrette Blount, only 10 carries, had 58 yards. Rob Gronkowski, 7 catches, 98 yards. Just missed out on a touchdown where he actually had it, and when he went to the ground, just could not hang on to the football to complete the catch. And so, tough loss for New England. But again, this is a loss that I think New England certainly can rebound from. I think they understand Lambeau Field is a tough place to play in. Aaron Rodgers and that offense on top of their game. I think if anything, if New England were to play this game again, they certainly want to try to run the football a little bit more effectively, try to tire out Green Bay's offense a little bit more down the stretch and maybe set up Tom Brady to be a little bit more effective in play action. Nonetheless, now both these teams are now 9-3. Would not be surprised to see these guys play in the Super Bowl later this year, although both of those teams still have teams like Denver out in the AFC and Seattle out in the NFC who will certainly have a say-so in those matters. The Sunday night football game, we've seen the Denver Broncos pretty much make easy work of the Kansas City Chiefs 29-16. This game could have really been a blowout if it wasn't for Denver only able to convert 1 out of 7 red zone opportunities and the touchdowns. That left new kicker Connor Barth kicking 5 field goals in this game, and then that last red zone possession, basically it was at the end of the game. Denver just kneeled down to run the clock out. But impressive win by Denver nonetheless. This is a game they could have came out and lost. On the offensive side of the football, Peyton Manning did what he needed to early to give give Denver an early 14-0 lead. Found Demaryius Thomas on a 30-yard TD. Came back the next drive. Found C.J. Anderson out of the backfield for an 11-yard TD. Once that lead was established, Kansas City certainly not a team that's built to play from behind. And to be quite honest, I mean, I know it's the system in place, but I think we're all a little tired of Kansas City's low-budget offense, this dink and dump West Coast. It doesn't manufacture any explosive plays, and if you're going to win in this league, you got to push the ball down the field. Alex Smith. In that offense, no excuse for it. What is Alex Smith came out passing for? I don't know, whatever it was. I'll put it to you like this. The Denver Broncos running back C.J. Anderson had 161 rushing yards. The Kansas City Chiefs offense as a whole had 150 yards. Absolutely pathetic. Come on, this is the NFL now. Now, we all know that the only weapon that Kansas City has is Jamal Charles. Luckily for them, he found his way in the end zone on a nice little catch he had out of the backfield. But they bottled Jamal Charles up. He only had about 60 all-purpose yards at the most. Again, you're looking at Dwayne Bowe, 2 catches, 18 yards. Come on. I mean, when is this guy, he's on maybe 30 straight games without a TD reception? It's just ridiculous what's going on with that offense. They've got to invest some dollars or draft picks or free. They got to do something. But Donnie Avery and Dwayne Bowe, these guys are not going to get it done. And no matter how well Kansas City's defense plays and Jamal Charles plays, you cannot lean on those 2 guys only week in and week out. Maybe Kansas City hasn't gotten a memo, but this is a passing league now. Yes, you want to run the football effectively. We see Denver doing that now. C.J. Anderson, as I mentioned, 168 rushing yards. Peyton Manning only threw for 179, but certainly did what he needed to do at the times. We all know that Peyton Manning are obviously one of the best quarterbacks all time, but that balance that C.J. Anderson brings to the table certainly beneficial for Denver. This is a team that we all know what they can do in the air with the weapons and Demaryius Thomas, Julius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, and those guys. But you're looking for Denver to be more physical, and you're looking for Denver to run the football. That's what playoff football is at the end of the day. Tough defense, being able to run the football, and then, of course, you got to make things happen in the air. So you like to see Denver continuing to improve in that area. Denver's defense played better, but I'm not overly impressed. I mean, after all, shutting down this Kansas City offense really shouldn't take a lot of work as is. I mean, very easy to game plan for. These guys are making no efforts whatsoever to challenge teams pushing the football down the field. And so Denver, impressive win, 9-3 now, still a half game behind New England because New England beat them head to head. But they've got a tough road ahead as well. You know, they're going to have to play San Diego, very tough Buffalo Bills defense. So Denver went out to Kansas City Arrowhead Stadium, one of the roughest places to play. And so Denver went out there, got to the season sweep over Kansas City. Kansas City now 7-5. They're still, if the playoffs started today, due to holding some tiebreakers, they would make the playoffs. But I don't think this team is scaring anybody. They got to find some ways to get that football downfield. I think like every season for Kansas City, if they make the playoffs till they can get those explosive players, their season is inevitably going to end very quickly if they make the playoffs for their inability to move the football down the field. Our last game of the week in Monday Night Football, seen the Miami Dolphins edge out the New York Jets 16-13. The Jets are now 2-10. Miami 7-5, and they needed that win to stay in the thick of things. Right now, when you look out in the AFC, you got the Cleveland Browns, Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins, and Kansas City Chiefs all at 7-5. Trying to keep pace, one game ahead at 8-4 is San Diego. I don't think there's any question this wild card race is going to go down to the final week of the season. This was a very ugly game, rainy weather out in New Jersey where this game was played, and really not a lot of offense. This was more of a defensive struggle, which I think we all anticipated it being. When you look at the quarterback position, Geno Smith was back in for the Jets, and it was the same old Geno. I mean, only passing the ball 13 times for 65 yards. I mean, this is another team, you know, they've got to find a way to pass the football. You know, this is not going to cut it. This is not grammar school. This is not Little League football. Come on, Geno Smith. 7 out of 13 for 65 yards. Pedestrian is what we call it. An interception as well. You know, this Jets team, they're done. We've said that for weeks now. Finally, Chris Johnson, his first 100-yard game of the season. Chris Ivory, 62 yards. So you could see that the Jets came out wanting to pound Miami, and rightfully so. You know, Miami's a team with one of the best pass rushes in the NFL. They can certainly get after the quarterback with Cameron Wake and those guys, but just not enough. You know, if you cannot pass the football, you're not going to go far in the NFL. And again, 65 yards for Geno Smith. There is no excuse for it. Unacceptable. I will certainly call this guy out on it. Ryan Tannehill, at least he put up some yardage, 235 yards, but did have an interception as well. As I mentioned, this was a defensive battle. Lamar Miller got a touchdown late in the third quarter to bring Miami, actually to tie that ball game up. The game kind of went back and forth. When you look at the wide receivers, no receiver on either team was able to amass more than 68 yards receiving. So these teams know each other very well. Jets playing for pride, maybe trying to keep head coach Rex Ryan's job. Miami needed this win big time, though, to stay again in the thick of that wild card race. It was a 26-yard field goal by kicker Caleb Sturgis of the Dolphins to give them the win. He kicked that field goal with 1:57 left, and the Dolphins were able to close that one out. So even though it wasn't pretty, I'm quite sure Miami will take the victory and move on. That is going to wrap up our show for today. I'd like to thank all of our listeners and viewers out there. Make sure, again, you're here with me each and every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we recap and wrap up all of your NFL action from each week. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at NFLExporter, Facebook.com/NFLExporter. The spelling for both of those is at NFLExporter. All right, everybody, have a safe and enjoyable week. Make sure you're here with me again. And if you missed this broadcast, don't forget 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday. You can catch the rebroadcast of this show. As always, I am your host, the NFL Exporter, signing out 1100.